Hey guys, welcome to Cooking with Chase. Hope everyone's having a good day. Today we are making what has become the infamous Kelowna risotto. So, Lori, this one's going out for you. We're talking about risotto today. We're also going to make sweet pea and basil puree that we're going to fold into the risotto. So we're going to be talking about a couple things, kind of how to puree veg, how to make a really classic proper risotto, and then from there you can start adding and subtracting and doing all kinds of crazy things once you have the base of a risotto. So there's not a ton of ingredients, and risotto is one of those things that I think has gotten, it's kind of like hollandaise sauce. It's just gotten this reputation for being very difficult and fussy, and it's really straightforward. There's kind of this idea that you need to be standing there stirring the pot constantly working, and it's actually kind of the opposite. You don't want to overwork the rice, or it's going to end up with something kind of clumpy and chewy and then not a super nice texture. So yeah, let's kind of dive right into it and talk about making a risotto. So the first thing you're going to do before you kind of start cooking is you need chicken stock. You could do this with water, but honestly, it's worth having chicken stock. And I said this again a lot. I've said this a lot. I'll say this again. Is really critical for this. Is it needs to be unsalted chicken stock, because we're going to be adding just a massive amount of this to a relatively small amount of rice. And if this is seasoned, your rice will be basically inedible. So if you have salted chicken stock, use water or cut it by like 2 parts water to 1 part chicken stock. Like, it just won't be edible because you'll be reducing it so much, so often that it just makes you salty. So, I've got a pan, kind of medium heat. Gonna get some oil in there. First step is sauteing some onions. And you really want to make sure your onions, in this case, are quite finely chopped. The idea is to kind of chop them the same size as a grain of rice. And this is so you don't want to be finding a big chunk of onion when you're eating risotto that should kind of dissolve into the rice is the goal. Got some onions cooking here. We're not looking for any color. A little salt. A little pepper. Remember, we're seasoning as we go here. We're building layers of flavor. And we're just looking to, for the onions to start going clear. Again, we don't want any color. We're not trying to caramelize, anything like that. We're just looking to soften them before we add our rice. These onions are going. At this stage, we're going to add some garlic. So you always want to get some color, not color, you always want to start your onions before your garlic, because they just take longer to cook. Again, maybe about a clove of garlic, roughly. And what you really want to be using for this is a spatula. Because we're going to be constantly cleaning the edges of our pot. You'll see once the rice goes in, but this is the tool for this job. Smell the best. Okay, so while this is kind of cooking down, we're just going to do, these are frozen peas. I'm a huge fan of frozen peas. I think there's some stuff that freezes really, really well, and peas are one of those things that they really get at their peak in season, and they freeze them right away, and like, except for a very brief window in the middle of summer, these are better than any fresh pea you're going to be able to buy. So, and I'm a big believer in like the microwave. So we're just going to microwave these, and I'm going to show you, there's only one real trick. Is whenever you're microwaving veg, really, really tight saran wrap on top of your dish, whatever that is. And the basic idea is that you're steaming this in their own liquid, right? We're not adding any water. Like if we were boiling these peas or steaming them, we're steaming them with water, we're boiling them in water, the flavor's coming out. This is just cooking in its own liquid. So it's actually a really beautiful way to cook vegetables. In a minute, Again, that depends on your microwave and how strong it is. Okay, so this is just kind of what you're looking for with your onions. Right, just starting to go translucent. You can see. Nothing crazy is happening here. We're just trying to look to get rid of a little bit of that liquid in the onions. Kind of starting to go clear. Then we're going to add our rice. So, I can't say words super good sometimes, but arborio rice is what you're looking for. Unico is the same brand as their tomatoes. It's a really good, it's a brand we buy. And you're just going to get your rice, about a cup and a half. This is going to swell quite a bit. It's going to blossom as we're adding so much chicken stock that's a fine portion for 2 people. So we get your rice dry in your pan. And you're going to start toasting it like this. And as we toast it, it's going to take about 2 minutes to toast. You're going to see the rice, you see how it's white? There? It's going to start going clear like that. And that's just the rice toasting and absorbing the fat from the oil. And then when we start adding our chicken stock to cook it, the rice is already kind of seasoned inside of itself. Again, a little bit of salt. We're seasoning as we go, right? We're not trying to like just go nothing and then all at the end. We're building a little bit of salt at a time. Because that's how you get, like, just like we talked about when you're grilling vegetables and you season them after and it pulls it in. You're trying to build that seasoned flavor like right from the middle of your food all the way to the edge. That's why we're seasoning as we go. Okay, so shut my things. These need a little bit longer. It's actually my first time microwaving peas in this microwave, so I didn't know. And then at this stage, if you have white wine, you're going to deglaze with white wine to reduce it. We don't, and I'm not going to go to the store to buy white wine because we're not allowed to do that. Though I'm sure the West Coast viewers probably have wine in the house. So I'm just going to use a touch of white wine vinegar. Now I'm going to use way less than if I'm was using white wine because this is way more acidic. But I just want to get a little bit of that acid. Like literally half a tablespoon is plenty for this. Cook it down. And now we're going to start adding our chicken stock. So that first initial hit of stock, you want to be fairly generous. And this is when you kind of want to work it. So you want to make sure that the chicken stock is around each grain of rice. And kind of get this process working. So what's happening is when you're cooking regular rice, right? Like, one second. There it is. Woohoo! That's right. So when you're cooking regular rice, the whole point is you're steaming it in a pot and you're not moving it. So that starch doesn't break down. You can end up with each individual kernel, you know, when you're doing it in a steamer. Risotto is kind of the opposite. So you're working it, and as the rice hits each other, the starch breaks off. And that starch is what's thickening your sauce, right? So at the end, we're going to finish with some butter and some Parmesan cheese. But really what's making the sauce thick is that little bit of starch that every time you stir it, a little bit of that rice hits. So the starch comes off. That's what makes the sauce really creamy and umptious. If you overwork it, if you're constantly stirring, you're knocking too much starch off. And you end up with something that's really like glumpy, like almost like porridge. You're not really looking for porridge, you're just looking for a really rich, creamy rice. So this is a really nice place, nice small bubbles. Maybe get a touch more heat on it. You can see that there's a lot of stock in here right now, but I'm not worrying too much about constantly stirring this. I'm going to give it a little stir here. Now we're going to go work on the puree, and I'm going to come back and add the stock. The only thing is you really want to make sure you're cleaning the edges of your pan, because that starch will burn on the edge, and then when you scrape that bit in, it's a really bitter flavor. So the edges of your pan, that's why the spatula is so critical, should really, really be as clean as possible. Okay, so making the puree. So I've just microwaved these peas. They're hot peas. This is going to get pureed with some basil. If you don't have basil, mint, delicious. parsley, spinach. Basil's great. This is kind of like a nice summer risotto. But yeah, mint would be fantastic. Even dill would probably be good if you're serving with fish. Awesome. So this is about a cup of peas, thereabouts, in the blender. Be fairly generous with your basil, but save a couple of leaves for garnish. There. I'm going to zest some lemon in there. So the difference between zest and juice is, think about the zest is like very floral. It's kind of like an herb, whereas the juice is very acidic. Oh no. Remember, always drop things when people are watching. And you don't want to go with this is called the pith, the white part. When you're zesting, you really want to keep it just the skin. All that in there. Okay, come back to the risotto. So you can see the rice is starting to bloom, starting to hydrate. Right? You can already see that starch is starting to come into the stock. But this, we need to add some more stock to this. And have your, you don't need this boiling, but it should be hot, right? Because you don't want to be lowering, if it's cold, you're lowering the temperature of your pan every time you add it. And it's not a really inefficient way to cook. Number one, it's also, the rice won't cook correctly because you're going cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot. So every time you add some stock, just give it a stir, make sure it's like completely surrounding the rice, and then I'm wiping the edge of the pan. Okay, so I got some zest in there. I'm only going to add the juice from half the lemon. Rid of some of the seeds. I'm just zesting it through my fingers just to make sure I don't have any seeds going in there. There. Add a touch of salt. And then we're going to add just a hit of chicken stock. Just to loosen the puree so it runs through the blender a little smoother. Going to get a little bit noisy here. Thank you, Lynn and Mike, for a wonderful Vitamix. So I need a bit more liquid. Okay, so whenever you're turning off your blender, make sure you turn it down to the bottom. You don't want to be turning it off at max speed, just a friendly tip from your neighborhood blender salesman. Okay, so this puree looks great. Smells amazing. Obviously that basil is super fragrant. It's a common look at your risotto. This is all you're doing though, right? Like I'm doing other stuff in the kitchen. You're not stressing about it, but you're just keeping an eye on it. Every once in a while, coming over, giving a little stir. Nothing's sticking to the bottom. I'm not cooking on crazy high heat, right? The biggest thing is just not letting it cook down all the liquid, like cook down until there's no liquid, and making sure nothing's on the side. But I'm not overworking it. And this is what's going to end up with that really nice, like, creamy, but I'm still going to be able to taste each individual kernel of rice. And that's kind of the goal with a really good risotto. I'm going to go ahead and add another scoop of liquid. Yep. So now I'm just kind of adding one ladle at a time. Doing the same thing. So you can see on the side, it's kind of hard to see when you first add the chicken stock, but I can't emphasize enough how important it is to keep the sides of your pan clean. Okay, so I'm just going to give this a quick taste. Oh yeah. So if you were doing this puree and you were like, you know, doing it on the plate, I would run it through, like pass it through a sieve. But because this is going into a risotto, like into something, it doesn't matter if it's a little chunky. And again, it's seasoned, but it's not like perfectly seasoned because it's just an element that we're cooking with, right? So we're going to be correcting it as we go along. Okay. Just touch more heat there. See where we're at for seasoning and rice. And this is one of those things that kind of happens quickly at the end too. Right? It's kind of like nothing, 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 and then that last kind of 2 minutes is where all the magic happens. But you can really see that like there's no butter in this yet, right? It's 3 ingredients, well 4 I guess technically, 4 ingredients. Like super creamy looking, but you can still see all the bits of rice, right? Like that's, the rice is like starting to bloom and hydrate. But that's really what you're looking for. This. Okay. So while this is cooking up, I'll just be great to get some suggestions. If you guys have any more for next week, just keep firing them at me. We love to hear them, and it's nice to hear. I've been thinking about doing some meatballs, doing a meatball recipe, maybe talking about braised meats. So just keep letting us know what you want to hear, what you want to learn about. Also, what Tyler wants to eat for dinner. Okay.
Ribs again.
Ribs? Oh. Ribs are hard because to do them live, like, they're kind of a 3-hour process. So it's kind of hard to do them in that half hour. I mean, I can go through, I was talking to my brother, and I was thinking about going through like a really nice toasted dry rub, which you could use on ribs. And if you want, there's like a bunch of really great videos. I can link them on how to do ribs like at home in your oven. But
and we got to vote for meatballs and steak cilantro wraps.
Steak cilantro wraps? I don't know what that is. Gotta do some research here. Okay, nice. So this is getting pretty close. About another 3 or 4 minutes. We got 1 more scoop of risotto, or sorry, chicken stock into the risotto. And remember, our puree has chicken stock and liquid from the peas and the basil and everything. So again, this is one of those things that you just kind of have to cook, you know, and you'll get a feel for it, right? I guarantee, well, I don't guarantee, but most likely the first time you do it, you're going to overwork your rice, and you're going to end up with a really, like, when this goes into a bowl or plate, it should fall. It shouldn't scoop and hold a shape. It should kind of settle. And if you scoop it into your bowl or your plate or whatever, however you're doing it, and you end up with like a mountain of risotto, you need more chicken stock in it. And that's what happened to me the first however many times I made it, right? Because it's going to look way thinner in the pan. Then by the time it cools a little bit, you've added butter, which thickens it. All this stuff happens at the end, and you're like, oh, got a great texture to it. You do all that stuff, you turn around to plate it, and all of a sudden it's like super thick.
We've also had garlic shrimp.
Okay.
Some sort of salmon recipe.
Ooh.
And something where you pan fry fish with the skin on.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, we can talk about fish all day. That's another thing that people can be very intimidating, but it's actually like once you know how to cook fish, oh man, it's the nicest because you don't touch it. You just all cook it on one side and don't think about it. Okay, this is getting real close. And I'm honestly probably overworking this right now because I'm like, I know you guys are watching and nothing's happening, so I'm getting nervous. I'm like, hurry up, risotto, cook. But I normally wouldn't be touching it this much.
Oh, lasagna.
Ooh, lasagna, yeah.
And Biff's Palm Aligot?
Palm aligot?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're getting French here. Might have to get Chef Zach in here for Palm aligot. He made that about...
Who do you think suggested it?
It was Zach? Zach, how many times do you think you made Palm aligot best, buddy? Zach was my sous chef at Biff's, so it was the first French restaurant I worked at, and Palm aligot is on the menu with our beef bourguignon. And I don't even want to think how many times that guy made that. Huh?
What is it?
Oh, it's basically enough potato to hold cheese and butter together. So it's mashed potato, but really it's mashed butter and cheese, where the emulsifier is potato. They're really good. Because it's like, you know how cheese is delicious? So then you take cheese and you just add a pound of butter to it, and then just a little bit of potato and about a pound of salt. Okay, we are really, really close here. But again, this is one of those things I can't give you a time for, right? Because it's your brand of risotto rice. It's how hot your pan is. It's all of these things. Okay. So it's still a little chewy, like a little al dente. Add a little bit more risotto. Add a little bit more chicken stock to the risotto. And you don't want to add your puree too early, or else it'll brown, right? You're cooking the vegetables, it'll lose its vibrancy and its color. Alright, so we are going to add our puree. The nice thing about this is it's going to turn the risotto this beautiful, beautiful green. We were out in Kelowna last summer for Rebecca, Laurie's daughter, Rebecca's wedding. And we had a really nice family dinner with Tyler and Laurel and Trevor and Lynn and Mike and everyone. And then we went to hang out with some of the family the night before the wedding. And I made this risotto. And we were having some drinks before the wedding in Laurie's suite with Rebecca. And I was like, oh, I'll bring down a little bowl of this risotto. And if they want to try it, I know Laurie loves food. Anyway, I ended up turning into a little bit of a fight over this little bowl of risotto. So this has been a much requested item for people, and I'm very happy that now they can make it on their own on the old West Coast there. So this is really what you're looking for here. We're going to reduce this down, obviously, but see the color is super nice. We didn't add the puree too early, so it's still a nice vibrant green, which is great. At this point, we're going to add some butter. Again, cold butter. There you go. And we are going to grate some cheese in there. Again, unsalted butter. I say it all the time, but we season the food. And again, I honestly probably added that puree a touch too early. You can start to see it going brown on the edges a little bit. No? Well, it's starting to lose its color a touch, just because it's getting cooked. Tyler's looking at me like I'm crazy. Oh, no, it looks great on the screen. Nailing it. Okay, so taste this, see where we're at for seasoning. super nice. We're just going to reduce this down a little bit, and then we're going to go to plate. Very exciting. Okay, so this can go in a bowl with just some more grated Parmesan cheese on top and some basil leaves. It's fine. This is another way if you're doing a fancy party. I think you guys enjoy the fancy platings. That you can present it. That would look really nice. So I've just got my microplane here, or sorry, my mandolin, and some just cremini mushrooms. They're just super thinly shaving some creminis. So, this looks super soupy, right? But honestly, by the time this like goes into the plate and then sits there for a second, this is kind of the consistency you want. So you can see how it's kind of, it's hard to describe, but if it just holds kind of a stream, see how it takes a second to collapse in on itself? That's a really good indication that you're in the right consistency. Okay, so my seasoning's good. I'm really happy with this. Just gonna take it. We're gonna play a little bit of it. Nice generous Tyler portion there. And then you can just do a little bit of cheese on top of this, and that'd be fine. You can also do. I love raw cremini mushrooms. They add super beautiful like earthiness to this. But this is very rich, right? There's a lot of cheese, a lot of butter, still a lot of flavor going on. So you take some of these guys and kind of bury it, right? Like food's kind of fun when you don't know exactly what you're getting. So it kind of becomes a surprise for the person. Again, I'm going to take some of these radishes that we used before. And this is just building texture as well, right? Everything's really soft and warm. Now you're kind of putting these nice, cool, crunchy radish on top. They're also a little spicy. Helps cut through that fat, right? Because your garnish should make sense in the dish. You know, I'm not just adding these because the color's there. There's some logic to it, right? Here. Then we're going to take some basil, and I just like to tear this up. And this, remember we talked about this with the pasta sauce, we're adding cooked herb, that cooked basil. We're adding raw as well, so you get the two different elements of it. It's beautiful. And on top of this, we're going to add some cheese. And finish it with a touch of nice olive oil. Thank you, Dawson, for getting me this olive oil for my birthday last year. Okay. Let's this up a little bit. So, yeah, about half an hour. You've got a beautiful basil sweet pea risotto with cremini mushrooms, radish, and fresh parm. Okay, guys, if you're tuning in, thanks for tuning in. If you're cooking along or making it, tag me at Chase Rose, hashtag cooking with Chase. Stay home, stay safe, eat well, and we will see you tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Thanks so much, guys.